We're restructuring to optimize operational efficiency, the CEO announced in our brief meeting. Your role is being eliminated, effective immediately. My name is Evan Cole for 14 years. I built the Southern Division of Titan Uniforms from a dusty warehouse operation in Houston into the company's most profitable arm. Not through flashy marketing or corporate jargon, through trust, hard work, and genuine relationships. I manage key accounts, personally learned their pain points, their milestones, even their kids' names. That trust translated into over $6 million in annual contracts. The new CEO, Chad Emerson, had only been with Titan for 9 weeks. Fresh out of an elite MBA program, tailored suits, buzzed haircut, always glued to his tablet. He never once asked me about the clients who kept Titan profitable year after year. When security escorted me back to my office to pack up Melissa from HR, a 20-year veteran avoided my gaze. Brian, the CFO, slowed as he passed by, opened his mouth as if to say something, then just clapped my shoulder awkwardly and moved on. I packed my things methodically. Family photos. The plaque from Bayfield Financial for outstanding service excellence. The thank you letter from Sunrise Health after we rescued a failing rollout. 14 years of my life reduced to a single battered cardboard box. I nodded respectfully to the security guard and exited Titan's sprawling glass building for the last time. In the rearview mirror, the company I'd helped build shrank into the Houston skyline. I should have felt relief. No more 70-hour work weeks, no more emergency site visits on weekends, no more carrying the burden of 30 employees' livelihoods. But instead of feeling lighter, I felt wrong. I joined Titan when it was still renting space behind a second-rate logistics center off Highway 59. Back then, they were struggling just to land regional banking and healthcare contracts. The Southern Division was bleeding cash when they hired me. I started with 9 employees and a mandate: fix it or shut it down. I spent those early years driving to every potential client within 150 miles, sitting through endless meetings, understanding their frustrations, delayed shipments, poor quality control, inconsistent service. And I fixed it. We grew from 9 employees to 32. We moved into real office space. I promoted from within when I saw potential, gave chances to people like Aisha in customer service, and Marco, a sharp kid straight out of design school. My wife Lauren stood by me through every 200 a.m. call, every weekend away. She believed in what I was building. I used to tell her, it's not just business, it's building something that will last. 3 CEOs had come and gone during my tenure. All valued what we had built, respected the relationships we nurtured. But the merger with Voltra Holdings changed everything. New board, new vision, new priorities. Efficiency over loyalty. Numbers over names. Margins over people. When Chad Emerson walked in the door, it wasn't hard to see the writing on the wall. I just didn't expect it to happen this fast. Or this cold. The morning after I left Titan, I found myself standing in my garage staring at the stack of boxes Lauren had helped me move the night before. I ran my hand over the side of one, tracing the edge absent-mindedly. 14 years packed away in a few taped-up memories. I drifted back to where it all started. Titan Uniforms had been a nobody when I joined a regional supplier struggling to stay afloat. I still remembered my first day. The office was a corner of a dusty shipping warehouse, desks crammed between pallets of merchandise. We didn't have a real client services team, just a part-time admin and a warehouse foreman who doubled as customer support. The Southern Division was bleeding nearly $200 a quarter when I signed on. My mandate from the CEO at the time was brutally simple: fix it or we're pulling the plug. No formal training, no onboarding process, just a list of inactive clients and a company car with a busted AC. I hit the road. I spent the next year crisscrossing Southeast Texas, sometimes making 3-4 client visits a day. I sat in lobbies for hours waiting to catch procurement managers between meetings. I listened not to pitch, but to understand. They told me about their frustrations with Titan and other suppliers' shipments that arrived incomplete. Uniforms that didn't fit properly, sales reps who overpromised and underdelivered. Instead of offering apologies, I offered solutions. Custom sizing options, faster turnaround times, personalized service. I promised them they would have one name and one phone number to call if anything went wrong. Mine. Slowly, business trickled back. First small accounts, then bigger ones. When Bayfield Financial signed a regional deal with us after 6 months of conversations and custom prototypes, it felt like a miracle. But it wasn't a miracle. It was trust earned one late-night sample delivery at a time. My team grew with the division. I wasn't just building client lists, I was building a culture. When I saw Aisha de-escalate a furious client over a misprinted batch of uniforms without losing her cool, I promoted her to account management. She deserved it. When Marco walked into my office at 23 years old with mock-up designs that solved half our sizing issues, I hired him on the spot. I believed in giving people room to succeed, and they delivered beyond my expectations. Within 3 years, Southern Division turned a profit. By year 5, we were Titan's fastest growing unit. When I started, my son, Ben, was just 10 years old. He used to sit at the kitchen table while I mapped out client territories on a beat-up Texas roadmap. Now he was a grown man setting out on his own career in engineering. Lauren, God bless her, never once complained when I missed anniversaries, birthdays, little league games. She understood what I was trying to do, build something that would last longer than any single sale or quarter. We had survived 3 leadership changes before Voltra Holdings swooped in with promises of scale and synergy. I didn't fear change, I embraced it when it made sense. But somewhere along the line, Titan had stopped being about relationships. It had become about spreadsheets. And no spreadsheet in the world could capture what we had built. The morning sun pushed through the kitchen windows as I sat at the table, a half-finished cup of coffee cooling in front of me. My phone sat silent on the table. No calls, no emails, no emergencies. After 14 years of constant motion, the stillness was almost unbearable. Lauren sat across from me, slicing strawberries into a bowl for breakfast. She glanced up now and then, but said nothing, giving me space to process. At exactly 9:18 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Megan Sullivan from Bayfield Financial. I answered on the second ring. "Evan, please tell me it's not true," she said without preamble. I closed my eyes for a moment before answering. "I'm no longer with Titan, Megan, it's official." Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. "Who's taking over our account?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "They haven't shared a transition plan with me." Another pause. I could almost hear her mind racing through the implications. "Our renewal's in 6 weeks," she said finally. "You know why we stuck with Titan after the last price hike, right?" "I had a guess," I replied. "It was you, Evan. It was always you." She ended the call, promising to figure things out and get back to me. 15 minutes later, the phone buzzed again. Chris Monroe from Sunrise Health, then Tina Brooks from Falcon Properties. The pattern was identical: disbelief, concern, then guarded questions about the future. I didn't solicit anything. I didn't badmouth Titan. I answered with nothing but the truth. "For a year, yes, I had been terminated." "Oh, I wasn't briefed on who would handle their accounts." "Yes, I was considering my options but had no plans yet." By noon, I had a list of 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails from familiar names, clients who had once been steady pillars of Titan's revenue. The last voicemail was from Marco, my former design lead. His voice was tight, almost conspiratorial. "Boss," he said, "word around the office is chaos. Chad's team is scrambling. No one has your client notes, no one knows the renewal schedules, they're freaking out." I leaned back in my chair, letting the words wash over me. For the first time since leaving Titan, I felt something other than bitterness or sadness. I felt clarity. They hadn't fired an account manager. They had severed the very relationships that had carried the company through recessions, mergers, and market downturns. And they didn't even realize it. Lauren came over and refilled my coffee. "You look different," she said, studying me. "I think I'm starting to see the opportunity," I replied. "Opportunity?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled for the first time in days. They thought they were cutting costs. What they really did was set me free, with every relationship that mattered still intact. I tapped my finger against my phone, considering my next moves carefully. There was no need for revenge, no need for drama. The truth was simple. The people who mattered already knew where the real value had been all along. And it wasn't in Titan spreadsheets. By late afternoon, the tone of the calls changed. Chad Emerson had called twice, then texted. I ignored both. At 5:02 p.m., my phone buzzed again. This time I answered more out of curiosity than obligation. "Evan, we need to talk," Chad said, without so much as a hello. His voice was tight-clipped. "There's been some confusion." "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "Several clients have expressed concerns. They're under the impression that you're no longer with Titan. That's correct, I said calmly. You made that official yesterday. Right. Well, we realize now that the transition plan wasn't as robust as it should have been. The board is concerned. We'd like to offer you a consulting arrangement, short-term of course, to help with client retention. A consulting role after unceremoniously showing me the door. I didn't answer right away. I watched Lauren across the kitchen calmly stirring a pot of soup on the stove. A life moving forward, not looking back. Let me think about it, I said, finally buying time. Good, Chad replied quickly, almost too eagerly. We'll send something over tonight. True to his word, an email arrived an hour later. 6 months consulting, handsome retainer, NDA attached. Buried in the fine print was a clause, non-compete, and non-solicitation restrictions effective immediately. Retroactive handcuffs disguised as an olive branch. Nice try. The next morning, another email arrived, this one from Titan's legal department. Subject notice of potential breach of employment agreement. The language was cold, formal, and unmistakably threatening. They claimed I was interfering with client relationships, breaching confidentiality, and suggested legal action if I continued unauthorized communications. I stared at the screen for a long moment. I hadn't called a single client. They had all called me. Still, the intimidation was clear. They wanted me scared. Silence stuck. I forwarded the email to Paul Henderson, an old college friend turned corporate attorney. Paul called me an hour later, his tone almost amused. They're bluffing, he said. I reviewed your contract from when you joined. No non-solicitation clause. The non-compete is standard 6 months but limited to direct competitors listed by name. Summit Ridge Alpine uniforms, even Sterling apparel aren't on it. And client relationships, I asked. Nothing restricts clients from contacting you. You're in the clear legally. I let out a slow breath, relief mixed with something else resolve. They're trying to intimidate you because they know they're bleeding, Paul added. You don't have to strike back. Just stay calm, let their own mistakes catch up with them. I thanked him and hung up. Later that afternoon, another text from Chad popped up. Urgent. Can we meet tomorrow to finalize consulting terms? I smiled grimly and set the phone aside. I didn't need their offer. I didn't need their permission. The bridges I had built weren't theirs to burn. They had already lost the only thing that really mattered, the trust. And there was no getting it back. The day after declining Titan's offer, I met Daniel Pierce from Summit Ridge Uniforms at a small coffee shop just outside downtown Houston. Daniel wasn't the type to waste time with formalities. He slid a folder across the table as soon as I sat down. Offer letters, he said, for you and your core team. Signatures pending, of course. I flipped through the documents quickly. Senior Vice President, full autonomy over client relationships. A meaningful equity stake. A voice at the leadership table. And for Aisha Marco and the others, positions that valued their true worth, not the numbers on a corporate spreadsheet. Daniel leaned forward. I don't want Titan's leftovers. I want what made Titan strong, the people you... I shook his hand firmly across the table. You'll have our answer by the end of the day. The next few hours were a blur. One by one, I called my former team, Aisha, Marco, Carlos from logistics, Tanya from client services, and Julian from operations. Each conversation carried the same tone, relief, mixed with quiet excitement. Tell me where and when, Aisha said without hesitation. I'm ready yesterday, Marco joked. By sunset, every offer letter had been signed. That night, Lauren and I sat on the back deck watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I told her about the meetings, the plans, the new beginning. You look lighter, she said, resting her head on my shoulder. I feel lighter, I admitted, for the first time in a long time. The next morning, all 5 submitted their resignations to Titan. No drama, no grandstanding, just short, professional emails thanking Titan for the opportunities and making it very clear they were moving on. By mid-afternoon, the text messages started pouring in. Marco's security escorting people out. Chad looks like he's about to crack. Aisha, they're holding emergency meetings, total panic mode. Carlos heard the board is getting involved. They didn't see this coming. I didn't need to be there to picture it. I could imagine the hurried conference calls, the frantic emails, the finger pointing. They had underestimated the foundation we had built, not in contracts or policies, but in loyalty and trust. Meanwhile, at Summit Ridge, Daniel wasted no time. We held a kickoff meeting that afternoon. No polished speeches, no team synergy buzzwords, just a simple agenda, rebuild the right way. I assigned each team member their responsibilities using the same principles that had worked for us before. Own your relationships. Fix problems before they grow. Treat clients like partners, not numbers. When we finished, Daniel raised his coffee cup. To new beginnings, he said simply. We clinked cups around the table. As I drove home that evening, I felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. Not pride in leaving Titan behind. Pride in choosing the harder but better path, one built on everything that had once made the Southern Division great. Titan could try to replace us. They could throw spreadsheets and consultants at the problem. But they had cut out the heart of what made their business work. And there was no fixing that. The fallout at Titan came faster than even I expected. By the end of that week, 3 more team members from my old division submitted their resignations. Word spread quickly in Houston's tight-knit business community. Clients grew nervous. Contracts that once seemed rock solid suddenly felt fragile. I heard the whispers before the headlines confirmed it. Bayfield Financial sent a formal letter to Titan's board citing loss of key personnel and concerns over service continuity. They announced they would not be renewing their multi-year contract effective immediately. 3 days later, Sunrise Health followed suit. Then Falcon Properties. Each departure was like a tremor, rattling the fragile foundation Titan had left standing. At Summit Ridge, Daniel and I kept things professional. We didn't actively solicit anyone. We didn't need to. Clients called us. Sometimes it was quiet conversations over coffee. Sometimes it was late-night emails that simply said, when you're ready, we're ready. I never spoke ill of Titan during those meetings. It wasn't necessary. Clients could see the difference for themselves. Meanwhile, Chad Emerson spiraled. Reports trickled in from friends still inside Titan emergency meetings. Outside consultants brought in slash prices offered in desperation to stop the bleeding. Nothing worked, because no discount could replace trust that had been broken. One Friday afternoon, about 3 weeks after our team's departure, Lauren met me at the door when I came home from Summit Ridge, waving her phone excitedly. Have you seen this? She asked, thrusting the screen toward me. It was a headline from the Houston Business Chronicle. Titan Uniform CEO faces board scrutiny amid client exodus. The article detailed how Titan's Southern Division, once its highest performing unit, had lost nearly 40% of its revenue in under a month. The board was reportedly furious, demanding immediate action. That night, as I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey, Marco texted me. Chad's out. Board forced him to resign today. Whole place is in freefall. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling neither joy nor vindication. Only a deep, steady confirmation of what I already knew. When you build a company on spreadsheets instead of relationships, it doesn't take much to watch it crumble. 2 days later, Daniel called an emergency leadership meeting at Summit Ridge. He walked into the room holding a thin folder. Titan's board reached out through intermediaries, he said, setting the folder down. They want to sell the Southern Division quietly before the situation gets worse. The room went silent. Daniel looked directly at me. You know the accounts, you know the people. If we buy it, you lead it. I didn't hesitate. I'm in, I said. Negotiations moved quickly. Titan had no leverage left. Within 3 weeks, Summit Ridge acquired Titan's Southern Division assets for pennies on the dollar. The same offices, the same infrastructure. Many of the same people rehired under a leadership that valued them again. We moved fast to reassure clients, rebuild broken systems, and restore what Titan had thrown away. Standing outside the newly rebranded Summit Ridge Southern offices, watching our old team hustle inside with a renewed sense of purpose, I realized something profound. Sometimes you don't have to burn a bridge. Sometimes you just have to walk away and let the fire consume itself. The rebranding of the former Titan Southern Division went smoother than I dared to hope. Within a month, most of our old clients had formally signed with Summit Ridge. Not because we begged them to, not because we slashed prices or made wild promises. They came back because of the trust we had earned over years of showing up, delivering on commitments and treating them like partners instead of transactions. Bayfield Financial renewed for 3 years. Sunrise Health expanded their order scope by 20%. Falcon Properties even referred us to 2 more companies in their network. Every handshake felt like a quiet affirmation. Every signed contract a nod to something deeper than business. Meanwhile, Titan was nowhere to be seen. Their headquarters still sat half-lit on the edge of downtown Houston. A ghost of the company that once boasted about unprecedented growth projections. Some days I drove past the old building after meetings just out of habit. The giant Titan logo had been stripped from the glass front, leaving behind faint outlines in the grime. It didn't feel like revenge, it felt like closure. At Summit Ridge, we focused on rebuilding differently better. We didn't just plug people into roles. We asked them where they thrived, what they wanted to build. Aisha, who had been pigeonholed as just customer service at Titan, now led a full account management team with her own staff. Marco finally had the resources to innovate uniform designs instead of just pumping out rush jobs. Carlos overhauled the logistics system from the ground up, eliminating bottlenecks that had plagued us for years. It wasn't just about winning business back. It was about creating an environment where people could actually thrive. Daniel kept his promises too. Every core team member received equity shares. Every one of us had skin in the game, a real stake in what we were building. One afternoon, about 6 months into our new chapter, Daniel stopped by my office holding a thick report. "Thought you might like to see this," he said, dropping it on my desk with a grin. It was the latest quarterly results. Revenue 38% above projection. Client retention rate 96%. Employee satisfaction highest in company history. I ran my hand over the cover page, letting the numbers sink in. Not because they proved anything to anyone else, but because they validated the simple truth I had carried from day one. Relationships over spreadsheets always. That night, Lauren and I celebrated with dinner at the small Italian place we used to go when we were first married before the late nights. The business trips, the missed anniversaries. Over a plate of pasta and 2 glasses of wine, she smiled at me and said, "You're building it, aren't you? The thing you always talked about." I nodded for real this time. Later, as we walked hand in hand to the car under the soft glow of downtown lights, I realized something. Winning hadn't required shouting, it hadn't required revenge. It had required patience, consistency, integrity. Titan had crumbled under the weight of its own short-sightedness. We, on the other hand, were just getting started, and this time it would be built to last. 1 year after the collapse of Titan's Southern Division, I found myself standing in front of the building that once carried so many of my hopes and frustrations. The Summit Ridge logo now gleamed proudly above the entrance, fresh paint covering the faded scars of the past. Employees filed out at the end of the workday, laughing, holding coffee cups, backpacks slung over their shoulders. Some familiar faces, some new. The energy was different now, lighter, stronger. I stood across the street for a while just watching, not out of nostalgia, out of gratitude. Gratitude for the hard lessons Titan had taught me. Gratitude for the chance to build something better. Gratitude for the reminder that what truly matters in business and in life cannot be captured in a quarterly report. It lives in the quiet trust built over years. It lives in the loyalty earned, not demanded. It lives in the small, invisible moments when you choose people over numbers. When I got home, Lauren was on the porch with 2 glasses of sweet tea waiting for me. "You went by the old place?" she asked knowingly. I nodded. "It doesn't even feel like it's mine anymore," I said, sitting beside her, "and that's a good thing." She smiled, reaching over to squeeze my hand. That evening after dinner, I reviewed the final paperwork for Summit Ridge's new employee ownership program. In 3 months, every full-time employee would receive shares, real ownership in what we were building. It wasn't charity, it was recognition. Recognition that the company's strength had never been about logos, leases, or balance sheets. It had always been about the people willing to show up to solve problems, to care, when no one was watching. As I signed the documents, I thought about the broader lessons this past year had etched into my bones. Tiny loyalty isn't owed, it's earned. Relationships outlast transactions always. Real leadership is measured in trust, not titles. Shomoraris, when you build something real, you don't have to fear starting over. Most of all, I learned that losing a title doesn't mean losing your value. Titles can be stripped away, offices can be emptied, companies can be sold off piece by piece. But if you've built genuine trust, if you've lived with integrity, what matters most will follow you into the next chapter. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to cling to it. It follows because it's real. As the evening settled into a warm Houston night, I leaned back in my chair, listening to the crickets starting to hum. Lauren brought out her guitar, strumming softly as the stars blinked into view. We weren't rich by tech startup standards. We weren't making headlines outside of a few industry journals. But we had built something real, something that would last. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I didn't just survive losing my job at Titan, I had grown because of it. I smiled into the night feeling a peace deeper than any promotion or raise had ever given me. The world measures success in titles and trophies. But the truth is simpler. Success is building a life and a legacy you're proud of even when no one's watching.